Good evening. Thank you for coming to tonight's lecture by Rossana Hu. It's a pleasure to have her here with us. I think many of you are familiar with her work. She co-founded Neri&Hu Design and Research Office with Lyndon Neri in 2006. Like many people here in SCI-Arc, is an interdisciplinary architectural design practice based in Shanghai. She studied in Princeton and Berkeley. She also had a minor in music, that's pretty cool. I always think that there is a much sophisticated relation between architecture and music, so I was attracted to that idea. Of course, on top of her design practice, Rossana has been involved in education for many years, teaching in Berkeley, Harvard, Yale, and many other places. She was appointed, she was the chair of the Department of Architecture at Nantou University in 2021, and recently, a year and change ago, she started her tenure as the chair of the Department of Architecture at the University of Pennsylvania Weizmann School of Design. Their work, as many of you are familiar, is a very interesting body of work, the work of their office, the Neri&Hu practice is like, it challenges boundaries between architecture, the interiority of architecture, product design, building very interesting and unique narratives between the East and West culture. So this is not a typical kind of body of work that you can classify so easily. So there is also a really deep, I would consider, connection between tradition and innovation, which I think is one of the most difficult things to achieve, and I think it's one of the challenges for architecture at any given time. Of course, the work, when you try to do that, you have to relate with certain notion of history, memory, and place, but also in relation to the human experience and relation with also the contemporary times that the work is produced. So as I said, on top of the practice, her commitment to education is a remarkable one. We always like to have leaders of institutions that we have a really good relation over the years, and an institution that we admire the body of work that they produce. But tonight also, the topic of tonight's lecture is on the idea of liminality, which I also was very intrigued by that notion. This notion, which is of course is in a space of experimentation, but is one that operates in the intersection of a theoretical frame, which I think any good architect should have, and the notion how that intersects with the design practice. And of course, how to do that in a way that today we live in very complex cultural times, how we navigate those things. She mentioned that part of this notion had to do with how we challenge and conceptualize the cultural boundaries of what they call a third space, a place of negotiation and translation when hierarchies and meanings are unsettled and reconfigure, reconstitute, and all that. So it's not just a space of transition, but a generative condition. This third space, which I think is a healthy obsession, is a site of negotiation and translation when the hierarchies need to be reconfigured and challenged at any given time. So if I have to say, part of what I find fascinating about their work, as I said, is the kind of the bridges between cultures, the bridges of what it means to produce contemporary architecture and how that keep evolving and changing and it's never settled. So it's a true pleasure to have Rossana with us tonight. So please join me in welcoming Rossana Hu to SCI-Arc.
Good evening. Thank you so much for that introduction. It's so nice to be here. I was greeted by this huge parking lot every time I come to this part of LA. I can never find a parking spot. So I think now I have to maybe bribe some people here. So next time I come, I can get to park there. So this institution, I think, remains to hold a very unique and significant presence for educators and designers alike. So it's a real honor for me to be here tonight. The subject of my talk, as Hernán said, is grounded on a number of conceptual framework that's based on the theme of liminality. And so just to give ourselves a little reminder, the word liminality refers to a state of being in between or transitional, often used to describe a phase where things are not fully one or another. It's rooted in anthropology, and especially in the context of a rite of passage, where it describes the middle stage of a ritual where a person is no longer in their previous role, but hasn't yet assumed their new one. Let me figure out how to do this. Okay, good. Sorry, this is the first time I'm using a new computer. Okay. So our firm, Neri&Hu, is also constantly shifting. We started 18 years ago as a two-person firm, and we've moved to many different locations due to the conditions that we were in. You know, in Shanghai, I think over the past 20 years, buildings, entire blocks have been demolished, and you get like a notice that you have to move a 100-person office within 2 weeks. Something like that does happen, and we've experienced that. And this is our current location with a group of talented young designers who work with us. And let me start by quoting literary critic and Shakespearean scholar Terence Hawkes, who once said, "The true nature of things may be said to lie not in things themselves, but in the relationships which we construct and then perceive between them." I'm sure we all look forward to the Biennale that's about to happen in May this year, and I might see many of you. And this is from 2 years ago when we were invited to the 18th Venice Biennale, wherein the curator, Leslie Local, she placed us in the dangerous liaison section. We can have the background noise go up a little bit. And it was in the Arsenale. The exhibition was part of the Laboratory of the Future. And for the curator, it's a time and space in which speculations about the discipline's relevance to this world takes place. And in response to Leslie Local's curatorial statement, we investigated and addressed the brief with an installation rooted in the concept of liminality, to cast liminal space as a zone between design practice and theoretical exploration. We presented 3 adaptive reuse projects. And the concept of liminality, or what cultural critic Homi Bhabha calls the third space, refers to this in-between area where different cultures meet, allowing for the exchange and negotiation of ideas. This space allows us to challenge dominant narratives. And for Neri&Hu, liminal space isn't just about cultural boundaries. It is also a place where design practice and theoretical exploration, they intersect. And hopefully, by looking at our work, you are reminded of some of the themes and issues that we are obsessed with. So the themes that I will touch on are things like reflective nostalgia, runophilia, which is the cultural fascination with ruins, and also the concept of pentimenti. My talk today will start with these 3 projects that we showed in Venice 2 years ago, and then expand towards some of the other projects that may also be exploring similar themes. Over the years, living and traveling extensively throughout Asia, we've noticed a trend. Major cities begin to look more and more alike. You can hardly tell where you are when you travel as much as we do, whether you're in Shenzhen or you're in Seoul, Kuala Lumpur, or Bangkok. The rapid rise of glass skyscrapers make it really hard to tell the difference between these cities. And in China, in particular, this phenomenon is pronounced because of the scale of urbanization and modernization that is happening there. So we arrived in Shanghai at this pivotal moment. We found ourselves at the crossroads of two forces. One, this push towards optimization through progress and technology, and also the pull towards nostalgia, looking back in history and finding cues for us to learn from. As Charles Meyer puts it, nostalgia is to longing what kitsch is to art. And we believe that there's real potential to engage with nostalgia in a constructive way, rather than merely reductive. Svetlana Bohm, she wrote extensively about this in her book, The Future of Nostalgia, and she called this type of attitude for preservation restorative nostalgia, a literal reconstruction of the lost home. So if you look at a place like Venice, I think the restorative nostalgia way of kind of, preserving history and architecture is very much employed. But there's another way to look at nostalgia, something that we are more interested in as creators and innovators, which is reflective nostalgia. So the notion is that it's more of a longing for home rather than really going home, because it's okay if you don't arrive at home, but the process, in that process of going home or looking towards history, something innovative and creative happens. And as we experience rapid changes in our environments, with the future uncertain and the present feeling really unstable, and I think we all feel that these days, more than architecture and urbanity. I think everything in the world seems really chaotic right now. It's natural for us to look to the past for some kind of stability. So we often turn to it, hoping it can offer some meaningful insight or content for our present. And this is an image of a cover of Domus where I think Jean Nouvel was asking, are we entitled to modify the past? And I will talk about that later in my conclusion. So ruins, for example, make us reflect on what could have been in the past and what the future might have held. They tease us with dreams of escaping the irreversible passage of time. But the fascination with ruins isn't just intellectual, right? It's also sensory. They provoked a visceral response, reminding us of the materiality that is slipping away. In contrast to European ruins, the Chinese understanding of ruin is distinct, quite different from the Western one. There is a critical gap, a liminal space between the physical ruins themselves and their representation. Many ancient Chinese structures were made of wood, which has long been decayed, and leaving only the foundations as remnants of their original form. But even then, I think these ruins are very much respected as kind of, a remnant of history, and very much holds a lot of meaning in its cultural context. And the Chinese word for ruin evolved from the word qiu. It means amount of rubble, which is like that amount of rubble that you just saw. And later on, I think after a few dynasties, the word qiu turned to another word, which is xu, which means emptiness. And I think the idea that materiality turning from amount of rubble into emptiness, I think that carries on a lot of profound spatial meaning for us. And over time, the idea of architectural ruin shifted away from literal representations and became more about suggestions and illusion. And we can see that all throughout Chinese art history. This subtle approach to ruins challenges our understanding of time and preservation. And the works presented here tonight, which you will see, reflect our belief that each project exists within a continuum of time, inhabiting a liminal space, always evolving. This is a small project that we finished a few years ago in Paris. So not all of our projects are located in China or even Asia. We're starting to work on a lot of projects in Europe as well as America. But today, I think because of the theme, I'm only showing projects in China. And each project is caught in a state of permanent evolution, constantly reaching towards its anticipated future. In recent years, our practice has been deeply engaged with adaptive reuse, which will be the first 3 projects that you will see, and particularly in relation to what we term the off-modern ruin. These remnants, often the byproducts of failed projects, raise important questions about sustainability, construction waste, and deeper philosophical concerns like originality and possibly authorship. When we engage with these remnants, we turn to the idea of pentimenti, a term from art history that refers to traces of earlier work, right? You've seen how artists, they draw over layers of old paint and draw on top of them, so rendering sometimes a completely different image from its original one. And in our approach in architecture, we were sort of exploring a different kind of logic that relates to ruin, one that is not romantic, not melancholic, but rather one that embraces a kind of tolerance for disharmony. This approach is inspired by Svelana Bohm's concept of off-modern, which I talked about. And the off-modern doesn't seem to move beyond modernity, but instead it looks to recover overlooked histories and explore unexplored territories in modern history, along with the margins of error in technological and philosophical projects. Svelana Bohm's premise that nostalgia offers a productive means to engage with issues of collective memory, displacement, and also urban renewal, embracing the contradictions of modernity. Bohm also highlights the link between contemporary ruinophilia, which is the love for ruins, right, and reflective nostalgia. She remarks that ruins lead us to think about the past as well as the future that never took place. It is within this liminality or threshold that we practice as architects in Shanghai over the last 18 years. And that is why the title of our last monograph, this is our second monograph, is entitled Thresholds, Space, Time, and Practice. So the first project that I will show, which, as a reminder, so the 3 projects that we showed 2 years ago in Venice, the first one is located in the South Bund of Shanghai. And if you've been to Shanghai, you know that the Bund is has very significant history, especially it was built during the concession era. And if you don't know about this history, it's a time of China when foreigners came and took over different plots of lands in different major cities. And here in Shanghai, the British, they led the way for European and the Americans to kind of chop up parts of the city in Shanghai for their own occupation. This area was called the International Settlement, and at once it was glorious and shameful at the same time, but today it's the pride of Shanghai's cosmopolitan past. This is the existing 3-story concrete shell that we got when we were told that it was in Shanghai. We thought it was the other Shanghai, but when we got here, we're like, oh, okay, so it's not that part of Shanghai, but it's the other south side of Shanghai. But it's okay because I think the client's brief initially was for us to demolish it. We were excited when he said that he wanted us to demolish this so we can build something new. But then the next thing he told us in the brief is that he wanted us to recreate the building as if it's from London Mayfair. And we said, why would you want to do that? I think it was, his own kind of aesthetic predilection. But as soon as we heard that, and we walked around the site, we walked around the existing building, we said to ourselves, could there be a different way for us to not so much preserve, but to use what is there at the time when we saw the project? Could we use it to kind of reconstruct and kind of use the existing building as a material for a fresh and new construction? And so that's how we started. So we were taken originally by the visual cues that prompted us to try a different approach to work with this urban relic. And so we started sketching away. We were really taken by kind of a lot of things that we found were unique to Shanghai. And so we wanted to bring those experience of Shanghai into the building. And being able to see these different views of Pudong, which shows Shanghai's modernity, but at the same time, next door neighbors that are really in kind of derelict conditions that were really beyond repair. So this is the street where the entrance is located. So this is that ruin, which operates as the muse to elicit visceral experiences, to connect the city to its past. That was what our intention was. And it's not so much about saving any significant history, but just that a useless remnant or something that's deemed as useless by the government because they wanted to demolish it could be somewhat preserved and turned useful. So when you enter from the main entry, you arrive at the lobby, and this is a 19-room boutique hotel. Calvino, he once wrote in Invisible Cities, arriving at each new city, the traveler finds again a past of his that he did not know he had. The foreignness of what you no longer are or no longer possess lies in wait for you in foreign, unpossessed places. So the architectural concept behind the renovation rests on a clear contrast of what is old and new, but also a blurring of boundaries between interior, exterior, blending the public and the private realms, and also creating a kind of disorienting and refreshing journey. A lot of people say it's easy to get lost in this boutique hotel, but I think that was our intention. We wanted you to get lost in a place like this, like you would get lost in a city. Each of the 19 rooms are entirely unique. The building sits on the Huangpu River, which is this river, so that the added fourth story and the rooftop are made in Corten steel, echoing the industrial ships that frequently pass by. This is a busy working port city, not just for show, but really a very busy port city. And you can see ships like this pass through on the rooftop overlooking the Pudong high rise, and offers a herbal garden on the side there. And these courtyard shutters that you will see here are made from recycled wood found on the existing rooftop. And we also made kind of different visual connections of unexpected spaces, not only to help one discover and explore, but like I said, to just get lost in. So from ramps that move up and down the atrium, you can gain kind of unconventional spatial perspectives into the different rooms, into territories, from public to private, and also from the building to the city. This may have compromised the room interiors to be smaller, but I think it encourages the guests to wander out of their private zones and promote more chance meetings. And you will find a lot of stairs. Some of the stairs lead to nowhere as a way to remind guests the history of this building and also the city. And the next project engages with more vernacular references and contextual cues with an aim to transcend local context to resonate universally. So we were in Shanghai, now we go maybe 2 to 3 hours north of Shanghai to a city called Yangzhou. So here we must mention critical regionalism, which I'm sure everyone understands, defined by Frampton as a fundamental strategy to mediate the impact of universal civilization with elements derived indirectly from the particularities of a particular space. Or place. And yet, I think today's globalized world and the digital age have radically altered conventional notions of local versus global. So I think critical regionalism is no longer, it teaches lessons, but I think it's no longer the only way to think about regionalism. So more recently, Nihal Perara has proposed critical vernacular as an alternative model, and recasting the vernacular as local, more kind of modern expressions in their own right. So that was our line of thinking when we took on this project. It's situated, like I said, in Yangzhou, which is a very scenic area. It's very famous and popular for domestic travelers. And the program is a 20-room wellness retreat. So the design brief called for the adaptive reuse of several existing buildings to house a new wellness retreat. So, obviously new construction was required because the program is much larger than what was left in there. Again, this is kind of like a ruinous landscape when we first went to the site. And we studied some of the typologies of Yangzhou and also the Jiangnan region. There were a lot of courthouse typologies, kind of this clan-based settlement rooted in Confucian ideals still were very much prominent when you walk around the city. And within that typology, there's a close relationship to the Jiangnan gardens. So the gardens, the classical gardens, that we look closely at a particular one called Geyuan, which is situated in the city, not too far from our site. So this is a garden that's built by a salt merchant in the Qing dynasty. Among their many qualities, these garden designs serve as a microcosm of utopian worldview and embodies the Taoist ideal of harmony with nature. That's a very kind of generic description of Chinese garden theoretical construct and ideal, but I think that's probably all you need to know for understanding this project. Something else that's also very interesting, the architecture within the garden. Here you can see, this is a plaque that you see at the entry before you get into the garden. The plaque actually has this rooftop view, and you can see that the garden is a nice square grid of it's a very traditional kind of formation, and separating each row of the courtyard building is the auspicious fire lanes. I say it's auspicious because back then only, the wealthy families can have large quarters like this to live in. And so if you have fire lanes, that means you have a lot of kind of quarters within your house. And this is what one of those fire lanes look like. They were the most memorable feature from our visit, which eventually became a conceptual foundation of our design. And this is the project site plan, where you can see the attempt to kind of unify some of the scattered elements that were left over when we went to visit the project. And kind of by using the spatial typologies of the lanes to form multiple courtyards. So that kind of gridded walkway is what we put in. There were a few buildings in there that were kind of left over, so kind of like stitching the old with some of the new insertions to be able to accommodate new programs. This is the entry court, and from here you go back to the covered walks, and it takes you to various courtyards. This is the outdoor theater, back to the covered walk, and like the traditional courtyards, they bring hierarchy to the spaces. They frame views of the sky and the earth and encapsulates landscape into architecture and creates this overlap between the interior and the exterior. So we start with the aerial view, where you see a clear orthogonal orientation. And they're formed by these gridded walkways that I explained a while ago that were inspired by the fire lanes. And these fire lanes, they work to function as a way to organize different zones. They guide your circulation, and also they define and wrap the functional spaces within. The adjacent ponds and waterway became part of the total landscape. So it's like the act of borrowing views, which is 借景 from the Jiangnan Garden design strategy. Nearly the entire project is composed of recycled bricks, collected from surrounding villages, and are reassembled on site as pathways that connect buildings, different views, and also peoples and different programs. So by dispersing these reclaimed material, a very simple act of destruction from another relic becomes part of the new building and gives, I think, fresh relevance to the discarded construction waste. The notion of autonomy in this context also invites reflection on its interpretation in Western versus Eastern philosophy and traditions. In the Western thought, particularly in Kantian aesthetic, autonomy is often tied to the idea of independence from external pressures. But in contrast, and I talked about it a little bit a while ago, the Eastern thought emphasizes harmony and balance within a larger cultural framework. The Eastern tradition of referencing earlier works rather than seeking radical new invention further underscores this concept. In this cultural context, architecture exists in a continuum, not expected to cut ties with its past, but rather to reinterpret and recontextualize the past. And working on this project, I think we learned many things, among which how to work with local craftspeople to ask them to make designs, because we, as Neri&Hu, we design a lot of products. We have a very talented group of product designers who work with us to work on furnitures and lighting. And for this project, what we did was we took a lot of the product design that we designed for, maybe working with Italian or Spanish factories. We took the same design and we asked the local craftspeople to build them. And through that process, we found that they actually had different ways of building, different ways of crafting the same design. And maybe the end result isn't as, advanced or sophisticated as what we had wanted, or working with Western factories, but I think what we found is that there these kind of different. There's a different wisdom in working with some of these local craftspeople. And this next project brings us to the south, which is a city called Shenzhen. And it's, if you know China, you know that part of the south of China. It's basically you can cross a border from Hong Kong and enter into China in Shenzhen. So many of our projects are based on the premise that nostalgia, right, rather than being regressive, offers a productive means to engage with collective memory. And so in the spirit of Gordon Meta Clark, where he's making space without building it, this next project expresses the techniques of more erosion and erasure. So this is that urban village. In Chinese, it's called Chenzhongcun, which is literally a village within a city. So this area of Shenzhen is called Nantou. It's a typical example of this phenomenon where a vibrant and lively kind of village sits in the heart of a modern and anonymous city, that is Shenzhen. And some of the distinct characteristics were retained in this part of the village within the city. It maintained a lot of the narrow alleyways, the dense housing, and also the organic piazzas and close-knit social network. This is an 8-story existing building. So our building is that the yellow building, the tallest one in the middle, and it's going. Our brief was to transform it into an 11-room guest house. And so this was the existing building. And life here is so colorful that we wanted to reflect the mundane and the everyday rather than simply mimicking the past or applying superficial materials as effects. So we were more interested to unearth the possibilities hidden behind the past. We asked ourselves, how could architecture reinvigorate a new sense of place? By carefully stitching the building into the existing fabric and first keeping the existing facade untouched, then finding a delicate balance between engagement with the urban fabric and also urban life with the kind of the autonomy of the architectural form. So this interplay between context and independence shapes the project's approach to adaptive reuse. This is a public entrance open to a public plaza. And to engage with a uniquely kind of organic circulation, it's important that we added this access and public realm to public shelter, since it internalizes and contains a piece of distinct artifact, a wooden house that you see. And on the level below, the level of the ramp earth, is a large circular reception. And throughout the lower level, we open slivers of kind of windows and skylights to orient oneself and also to allow some daylight. From this grand hall for tea service, you can walk up to the mezzanine level. And when you walk up, you can see at eye level the wooden relic on your right. So the new roof in the copper, or made in copper, echoes the roof line of the enclosed wooden relic. A sunken courtyard contains a pool that filters light below, and it's through this thin film of water that sunlight can pass through. So this project, it juxtaposes a preserved and yet restorative piece of history with a new structure, and formally reflects the ruins of Jingshan Temple, a collective memory that is embedded in everyone in Fuzhou. So comes to the last project, and now we are all the way up north to Beijing. So I've taken you on a journey throughout China today. So we were called to convert this old cotton textile factory and warehouse to a gallery and a headquarters for an old pastry brand. The pastry brand was formed in, I think, 1911. It's called Feng, so, old Beijing people, they remember it well. And I think the client, they feel that they needed to refresh their brand, so they bought this warehouse. They wanted to turn it into a new location for themselves. And the design is inspired in part by the client's main product, traditional pastries, and it's often formed in a decorative mold like this one. The notion that a container may hold and also form the shape of its contents within to make pastry, I think that was, really interesting for us. Then through masking and revealing, we created an interesting and spatial kind of juxtaposition of old and new materials to form this, the concept of the design. And you can see here that a train track used to run through the site, delivering raw materials from the city to this part of the outskirts of Beijing. The site we inherited was a shell of an existing warehouse that needed major retrofit. You can see here the kind of a section of the site, and this is the plan. Basically, you can see how the strategy was kind of inserting these different objects that make up the different programs in here. So the exterior is left mostly intact as is, except the entry is encased in new layers of glass and metal. The concrete is molded into the existing brick walls. They form new rooms and doorways and window frames and kind of ceiling cuts. And like I said, the program is for the client to create a new way of displaying traditional pastry. So we created a gallery kind of displaying traditional pastry as art piece, as an installation, and in a very kind of modern and minimal setting. So you'll see this brick on the left side. As a strategy, the brick wall is often pulled back, forming kind of a backdrop to the newly formed concrete rooms. So either as stairs or workspaces or corridors or conference rooms. And also we carved some of these double-story atriums to reveal, like this one on the left side, to reveal them in kind of a sectional quality, so how the new functions, they work with the existing brick envelope. And rooftop offers some cuts like this into the concrete for sunlight, for fresh air. And while the concrete itself operates like a surface treatment, surface covering, I think the main objective is not to conceal only or obscure, but rather to also reveal existing imperfections. You'll see that the application of new concrete, in a way, they kind of complete the wall. They complete the ruinous building, as it were. So enabling new functions to make the space work. What is revealed isn't only the markings of existing wall compositions, but also the local low-tech roughness of construction. So by exploiting the plasticity of a simple material like concrete, a derelict wall is transformed into an inscribed surface. So to close, I want to address the discipline's liminality between engagement and autonomy. That is, as architects, we should look for an active dialectical exchange and interrogate the conditions that we have to respond to. Henry IV once said that had he asked what people wanted, they would have begged for a faster horse. So I think this should remind us that the importance of our role as creative thinkers is not to subject ourselves to how we have done things in the past and continue and repeat them. The approaches to architectural autonomy, no doubt, I think vary among architects. I think all of us use different tools, we use different methods, but I think we're all looking for new strategies for architecture's agency in today's society. So, and this agency isn't based on, and it shouldn't be based on architecture as a higher form of art. In fact, I think we need to find new relevance to outdated traditions and manifestos. And I think this is, one case in point here at SCI-Arc. I think, the school does that so well to really innovate and look for new ways of thinking and find new relevance for architecture. I think you would agree that we should use our disciplinarian autonomy to seek architectural engagement. And architecture must not only shape society, it must question and challenge it. Our work should not simply mirror the world, but reflect a new vision of the world. I think we need a balance within this liminality, but also a level of tension is healthy and critical. Sarah Whiting challenges the term adaptive reuse in the article she wrote on our projects in Domus, which is that cover that I showed you. She preferred the term seamless synthesis to mean something that unlocks intellectual horizons and other worlds. Quiet synthesis is not meant to mask or distract, but neither is it meant to call attention to itself. So hopefully with this and other projects that I have shown, which cross divides between the past and the future, between locations and cultures, between traditional practice and also alternative programs, we're able to construct new relationships and new understandings between architecture and society. Thank you. Should I take questions?
Hi. In your work, there's a constant level of care and reflection on time, memories, and cultures. I wonder in this context, how you think of architecture and spatial design as the teller and maker of stories?
Interesting question. I think the obvious answer is that we all have different stories to tell. And sometimes it's our story to tell, sometimes it's the project story to tell. So I think every project comes, even a new building, a new construction, I think comes with such complexity from the site, from the program, from the client, from the users, different aspects of its history. I think all these things kind of formulate the story that an architect wants to tell. But sometimes it's not about the architect's story, right? Sometimes it's, and hopefully, and I think, now that I am very much a full-time educator, I was kind of a part-time educator before, but now I'm very much a full-time educator. I think my belief in pedagogy within architecture is that hopefully we are moving away from, architecture as the capital A kind of, the creator of everything, the god of urbanism and also buildings. Hopefully we can kind of step back and question our big ego architecture and maybe look at the stories that other people have to tell through the building itself through the people, through society, through, land, mountain, water, rain. I think all these things, they construct a different narrative from the way the architecture narrative has been in the past. And so, yeah, I think stories are everywhere. You just have to find the right one that is suitable for your project.
Hello, over here. Rossana, super fantastic, like just astounding work. I have two observations. One is, it strikes me that you're placing a lot more emphasis on circulation, like, if it's corridor, like fire lanes becomes corridors, or the staircases are given a higher emphasis. Whereas I guess where one would expect destinations to be the highlight, you're kind of emphasizing the public-facing front, which in this case is circulation. And I think that's in almost every single one of the projects, there's this investment to let the material speak where there's a larger, let's say, traffic or population passing through it, which is, once again, circulation, right? The second observation I wanted to make is, whereas a genius architect may say something like, oh, please give me tabula rasa. I would love to start from scratch, like give me a ground up, please. A genius architect may say that, but you guys are saying we need to play the game of exquisite corpse. We need someone to have come before us and have drawn something in order for us to draw over it, on top of it, with it. And that to me, is it adaptive reuse or is it seamless synthesis? But I feel like the tradition of exquisite corpse lives very lively in your work. Sorry, these are less so questions, more observations.
I think very, very well put. Thank you. But the circulation part, that's a new one. I haven't heard that, but very interesting. And I just want to comment to your comment. Circulation, usually when we think of circulation, we think of them as functional. And I think in this case, circulation becomes the subject of exploration and can be very powerful conceptually. And yeah, so I think that's my takeaway from your comment. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for your really mindful and insightful lecture. And just I have a question, like two questions. So the first one is how you, at the beginning of the project, you control the balance of breaking the norm, but also appreciate and respect the legacy of the context. And also, your way, what is the best tool for translating these dialectal languages to the clients?
The real answer is, I think you have to come and follow us for years and years to know how it's done, and every project is different. I think for one, it's really, when we worked on Waterhouse, for example, I think it really was there was a moment of awakening when we saw the existing building being one that is already sanctioned to be torn down and demolished. There was that moment when my partner and I, we were on site, we looked at each other and we said, what if the building is already done? Like, we will keep this, but work with it. And we've never done that before. It's actually the first time we did an adaptive reuse project. This is before the term adaptive reuse. And I think if you're from Shanghai or even China, you probably know what I'm talking about. I think at that time there was 3 on the Bund in Shanghai, which we participated because we used to work for Michael Graves. That was a project that brought Lyndon, my partner, to China. He was in charge of all the projects in the office in Asia. And 3 on the Bund was Michael Graves' insertion of his kind of postmodern geniusness into a turn-of-the-century kind of, Hong Kong, modernist building, or not modernist, but kind of post-colonial building. And then there was Bund 18. I don't know if you guys remember, but Bund 18 is a, they said that Bund 18 was constructed with a toothbrush. What that means is, very carefully they were placing back its history and sometimes reconstructing facades and interiors and moldings, trying to mimic what used to be there. So this is why reflective nostalgia and restorative nostalgia is so informative for us, because I think, at the time there were only those two types of attitudes towards historic buildings. And we were, I think, the first ones to say, hey, just because the government or the preservation board does not feel this can be preserved or this needs to be preserved, it doesn't mean that it has no value, it has no content. And I think we found a way to ask the city to relook at the kind of rampant demolition, and maybe parts of the city can be preserved in this way, so that we're also helping the city move towards the future. I don't know if that helped.
Obviously, in LA, we're at a moment of major architectural change after the fires. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on the approach to rebuilding. Obviously, our nostalgia is way younger, and our ruins might be less usable than your norm.
It's a very interesting question. I drove up yesterday from San Diego, and I checked into a hotel, the Hoxton, so I guess it's downtown LA. And I was in that area maybe a few years ago, also staying in a different hotel. But I think there's much less activity, and a lot of the buildings, they look vacant. And I was thinking, how does one actually, make vibrant a neighborhood like that? I'm not really answering your question directly, but the question is, can we relocate people? Can we not build on places that doesn't need to be built? Can we just use what we have? And I think that's a much larger question than just architecture. I think architects, I was trained in the US. I went to school here, and my first 10 years of practice was here in the US. And I think architects in the US have a sense of system, which is so useful, because it really gives you the agency as professional architects to do your work. But at the same time, we kind of lose the ability to innovate and think creatively. What I have learned over the past 20 years working in China is that, clients come to you as an architect to do everything and anything. When we designed for the Mandarin Oriental in Bangkok, I remember they wanted us to pick music for them, even construct like makeup patterns and, design jewelry. What I'm saying is, I think, architects need to step out of our kind of professional box and to be able to conceptualize new ways of making space and buildings and living quarters more relevant. So, and this is much more than just, what do you design when a client comes to you? Is there a way for us to be the client? Is there a way for us to construct new ways of formulating spatial use? And maybe this is a new era for architects to all become also planners and developers. I feel that, maybe it's all this special, like this world is becoming like way too specialized, that we are only good in the kind of the small territory that we're trained in. But just as a simple question like, what happens to all these vacant buildings downtown? And while we are worried about constructing a lot of buildings that have been burned down, and definitely many of them needs to be reconstructed, but I was thinking just today, this afternoon, walking by, there's all these buildings that are not being used. Can we find a way to use them?
Hello?
One more? Okay.
Yeah, one more. I wanted to go back to your client that you mentioned wanted the sort of Mayfair-style project, and I know a few of us probably rolled our eyes. How did you, as a sort of organization or firm, get to the client and be able to show the client a different way? Was the client, because the end result looked much different, completely different project, and also, it seems obviously that there was a lot less waste, not having to demolish a whole building. But as far as costs for the client, did the client save money? Was it the same? How did that, I'm assuming that also factored into the decision to move forward with something different.
I think a lot of it has to do with the time and place and the specific client that we were engaged in. And at the time, I think a lot of clients in China, they have money, they have land, they have resources, but they don't know what they want. So they come to an architect to tell them what they should do. They have an image of Mayfair because I think for them it's, beautiful and historic and it attracts a lot of business. And that's why they brought that to us as their brief. But I think when we are able to show them other possibilities that can be just as viable business-wise, maybe aesthetically, it's, of a completely different inclination. But what they cared about is really, business. Am I going to be able to attract a clientele? Are people going to come here, want to come here? And I think that the story with that project is after we finished the project, a few of our existing clients with other projects, they ran away from us because they walked in, they took a look, they're like, wait, I can't believe this is what you've done. We don't want you anymore. But a few years after, the tourism board of Shanghai, they actually put that project on the cover of their, advertising magazine, because by then all the celebrities, from Lady Gaga to, I don't know, singers, actors, when they come to Shanghai, they rent that hotel, and it just became, so popular, and business went wild, went viral on social media, that they realized, hey, maybe there is a way, there is a new way of looking at these buildings that we deem as useless. So I think, every case is different, but we just took a lot of time to discuss and explain to the client what we were looking for. And we often have to do this, they have a very concrete idea of what they want, and almost seemingly giving us an architectural answer and a design answer. And what we try to sit down with them is, don't give us an answer in our discussion. We want to look for, what is your end goal? If it's 95% occupancy, then we can deliver that with a different design. If it's, I don't know, like a certain budget, then we can deliver that with a different design. But kind of extracting and understanding what their end goal is and deliver a different kind of design, aesthetically, different sensibilities. I think when you can prove it to them that it can happen, then I think there's a trust that can be built. Okay, thank you so much.